Tired of simply keeping students engaged? Today's guest wanted to challenge the status quo and refocus her classroom towards student empowerment. Hear how Ally ditched the one size fits all approach. By listening to her students, she created spaces where ownership ignites a passion for music.
Welcome to Pass the Baton, Empowering Students in Music Education. Here, we amplify the voices of music teachers around the world who are passing the baton and creating environments where the music students are empowered. Together, we can help students transform from passive consumers to vibrant creatives. Welcome back to the Pass the Baton podcast. I'm Kathryn Finch.
And I'm Theresa Hoover. We're so glad to be with you today.
Yeah.
So, Kathryn, today was another fun interview. We got to talk to Ally about all the great things going on in her classroom.
She's such a good teacher. It's really nice to connect with her.
Yeah. And I really appreciated how she was describing just small changes and small shifts that she's made over time in working with her students. It's not like a complete overhaul to the program. It wasn't anything massive, but yet just those little things really did make a big difference.
Yeah. And I love the focus on, I wanted to make little shifts for the kids, because you cannot just make all of these massive changes for them, for their learning experience. It would be too hard for them, right? But it was a nice, slow and steady for them, which is also nice and slow and steady for the teacher. Right. It makes it doable for everybody.
Yeah. And it sounds like she is just continually listening to her students, making these little changes. And it's exciting to hear and to find out what's going to be next. What's the next step in all of this for her?
For sure.
All right. Well, before we get to the interview, do you feel like you're drowning in lesson plans and wish that you had a musical support system in your corner? Well, grab your favorite mug, because we have just the thing for you, and that's the Pass the Baton Coffee Club.
For less than the cost of that fancy latte, you'll unlock a treasure trove of free resources. Get invited to our monthly planning parties, think virtual coffee break with amazing lesson ideas, and score sweet discounts on music education goodies in our store.
Or if you just want to lend a hand to the Pass the Baton mission of empowering music teachers and music students, you can become a supporter, only $2 a month.
Think of it as a way to fuel your passion, elevate your teaching, and connect with a vibrant community of music educators.
So be sure to check out the link. It's in the show notes. You can learn more and you can join the coffee club today. You deserve it. Okay, welcome back, everyone. We are glad to have you here with us. And we're also really excited to have our guest today, Ally McGowan. Hi, Ally. How are you?
Hi, I'm good.
That's good. Well, we're very excited to have you here. I think it's really neat that we were able to meet last semester when we were teaching the course through Vandercook. And one of the things that Kathryn and I just really enjoyed was that you had already been doing some things to think about, empowering the students and passing the baton, if you will. But then continued to just kind of build upon that throughout the semester. So we'd love to hear all that's going on in your classroom. Yeah, we're excited about it.
I can't wait to share.
Awesome. Well, could we start with you introducing yourself, telling us a little bit about your background and current role in music education?
Yeah, sure. So I went to the University of Connecticut. So that's where I grew up on Long Island. So it was like a huge music state. With NYSSMA and everything. So I had a very strong musical upbringing. And then I went to UConn. I got my bachelor's and master's in education. And it really just kind of stuck me in Connecticut to teach. So I started my career in Ridgefield, Connecticut, teaching elementary strings in 3 different elementary schools. So that was, cool, different experience. I did that for 9 years. And then now I'm in another part of Connecticut, closer to home, in a middle school. So totally different. And it's just one school. So I'm very happy about that. And I'll be going into my 3rd year there. So I do have a lot of experience with string advocacy. Ever since UConn, I was really passionate about making sure everybody knew about string education, because sometimes it could be part of the Connecticut state is very band heavy. And I really wanted to try to make it a universal band, orchestra, chorus kind of thing. So I'm a part of the American String Teachers Association, the Connecticut branch. And we work pretty heavily to make sure everything is, equal opportunity for everybody. And that keeps me passionate to go back year after year. So,
Yeah, I love that. It's so important because there are different places in the country where it's very band heavy.
Yeah,
And it's wonderful when we can see the strings getting just as much focus. That's awesome.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And you teach so middle school orchestra right now.
Yeah, I'm very lucky where I teach 6, 7, and 8. So I am their only orchestra teacher. So it's really nice for me that I can, I'm their only teacher for 3 years. So I have a lot of, weight and control. And I feel that, we'll talk about it later, but, empowering them to really just be individual musicians as they go off into high school. And my focus for my master's was transition years. So 5th grade to 6th grade, and then 8th grade to 9th grade, and how important those transition years are. So I feel like I have such a cool role in that now because I can go to the elementary schools, I can go to the high school, they can come down. So I feel like that's really where my passion is. I'm very excited in this new middle school role.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds great. Yeah. Well, before we get into like the specifics of kind of what you've been doing, one of the things that we talk about a lot is this difference between engagement and empowerment. And I remember when I started teaching, forever ago, engagement was like the thing. You wanted to have them engage, which is we do, right? We obviously want them doing it. But when we think about empowerment, it's a little bit more. So what does that mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, I like before we took the class, I'm like, ooh, I think I'm just engaging them. I don't really, I mean, you always want to empower them, right? But what does that really mean and look like in your day to day? So I did reflect on that a lot during our class. And I am very engaging, just my personality. I'm very extroverted. And so I'm going to get your attention either way. And, it's great because the kids really respond to it. But I really wanted to focus on empowering them. If I wasn't their string teacher or I'm not with them in the outside of the classroom. So what that looked like in my classroom and how I was going to design my curriculum to make sure that they were empowered. So I've been really focusing on that in the past couple years, I would say, like not as much with the elementary because that was the beginning of my career. It was kind of just like, who am I? And, how do I fit in here? But now being a little bit more experienced going into the middle school role, I was like, okay, these guys like have their own personality, they're going through things. Like, how do I get them to be their own individual and get empowered in my classroom? So I had such great examples from your book and the podcast and everything to really just like try every day. Like I tried something new every day and just a little bit at a time. I didn't want to overwhelm them and see what worked and see what didn't and use their voice. I mean, did it work? Did you like it? Didn't like it. Why didn't you like it? So they're really cool in that age because they'll give me an honest answer. They're not they really looking up to you anymore. They will be like, no, Miss McGowan, we didn't like that.
That's funny.
So that's kind of how I've approached it.
Yeah. I really like, I'm sure this will come up later too, how you said that you did just little things at a time to not overwhelm them. And that's so smart because if you change everything all at once, first of all, it's a lot on you, right? It's a lot on the teacher, but then it could also just really quickly go sideways and then you've made no ground. Whereas if you try something little and they're like, yeah, nah, that wasn't it. They still trust you to try something else later.
Yes. Trust is a huge thing with middle school. I mean, with every kid, but especially.
Yeah. I even think too, just, you ask them, they kind of push back and say, that wasn't quite the thing. And then you listened and tried something different. That action is huge, right? Because we can get up there and say like, oh, you're going to have so much in my room, ownership in my room and all this. And then your actions can really not match that pretty easily, right?
Yeah.
So,
I think a big thing in my own teaching is that I always, what I'm saying, I hold true to what I'm doing. So I'll never, be like, oh, you guys can pick the program for the concert. You know what? Let's just like have you guys pick all the, I'll kind of say, if we achieve what we need to achieve by a certain time, we'll go through a couple pieces and then you guys get to choose one piece. And, just having that balance and definitely student focus, like they know I'm there, but, to help them and to guide them, but there's one piece. And then they feel safe and they feel like they can trust me to deliver that. Whereas if I just kind of was like, you run the whole rehearsal, like, good luck, they're like, oh my God, like, okay, we're just going to play games on our Chromebooks all time. So yeah, I think that's like very important balance for me, to make them feel safe and like trust me that what I say, I'm actually going to scaffold for them and I'm going to help them through it, but not too much. I'm a huge proponent on teaching them life skills in my classroom, because I feel like we lost a lot of that street smart type thing in curriculum. So I do want to focus on like, you guys figure it out. It might take you a little bit longer, but I'll be here if you need me, but I want you to try to like do some problem solving,
Yeah.
So.
That productive struggle, right?
Yeah.
Like it's okay to kind of try a couple of things. And then, I'm usually there to be like, yeah, Siri, look at you, you did it, and build their confidence. But yeah, it's okay to have some productive struggle. Like that's how we learn. Right. And you're right. There's so many little eyes looking at you that just are like, just tell me what to do and I'll do it. And it's like, that's not going to help them be lifelong musicians.
No, they grew up with, calling for Alexa or calling for Google if they have like a question, right? So it's like a crazy thing now where if you have a question, you expect an answer. Whereas it needs to be a little bit of the, problems. I mean, even for me too, it's hard to be like, I'm not going to go to technology just yet. I want to try to use my brain a little bit to see if I can, figure this out myself. So I do kind of go back and forth and make sure that they have those skills to be successful in life.
Yeah. I remember once getting called in by an administrator and he was like, so this parent called and said that you wouldn't tell her kid how to play a note. Like, what are they talking about? I'm like, well, all I said to the kid was, how about we look at the finger? And like I said something to that effect. Like,
right.
To help them. And the person was like, yeah, okay, you're fine. I know.
Wild what happens in the classroom and then what's, how it's school today going through.
She wouldn't tell me. Right. I wouldn't, because you had a fingering chart right there.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. Well, something that I noticed, something in the class that you talked about that I really love is that you said how you kind of refocused your classroom after you've kind of decided this, like, oh man, I think I'm more on the engaging side instead of the giving them student ownership, right? And having them kind of helping them become independent musicians. So can you share some ways that you kind of made it more of a student-centered classroom space?
Yeah. So just from, experience and trialing, the rehearsal menu in your book where you have like appetizers, main entree, dessert, they loved that. I mean, they just grades 6 through 8 and 8th grade surprising me that they, were just the same. I'm like, where is this enthusiasm? Like, because 8th grade's a little bit harder to, get, excited. But they loved it. I mean, they loved that it was their choice of flow. Like, typically when we get overwhelmed, like, every single day coming through, there's a lot of like pieces we have to learn as conductors. I tend to kind of like recycle through warm-ups and then go through the piece and then go through, improv and things like that. I'm like, what do you want to start with today? And just giving them that option of what you want to start with today and, empowered them to be like, oh, what do I want? Not what the teacher is telling me. Mm-hmm. So I think that was a huge success. And the elements of that I've like kind of picked apart and went into my lesson planning that way. So it wouldn't always be that way, but I'd say, okay, we did such a great job on this section of this piece. Like, do you guys want to do a little bit like of an improv rhythm game? And again, you say the word game and all of a sudden, the rehearsal changes. It doesn't matter if it's a game or not, but if you say that, Yeah. So that worked really well in my classroom. I started to do a flipped playing test where they, you know, give feedback to each other. I'm not really involved.
Yeah.
I'll kind of scaffold that as I go through and as they get older. So sixth grade might need a little bit of like a scaffold from me where we start with me directing it and then talking through why I'm giving that type of feedback. And then seventh and eighth grade, I'll flip it. So I'll have them, play something and then we'll discuss. And it's really hard giving feedback. So we've worked pretty heavily on taking ownership of the words you're using and making it in a positive and constructive way. So having them take the word good out of their vocabulary and putting something, with music terms up on the board, trying to like engage them. So that's been really nice. They've taken ownership of their playing assessments that used to be something that's like very teacher student to now like a collaborative process. And it's not so scary when you make a mistake. And that's huge for me. Like we all make mistakes. So, your mistake wasn't bad. Let's construct it in a way to make it, better next time. So I've been working pretty heavily on that type of mindset in my classroom, how they treat each other, how they talk to each other, and in like music terms, being knowledgeable and talking to each other, So those are the two big things that I've been working on the past couple years. Remember, like, this is my third year going into this middle school. So little things I'm trying to kind of like plant seeds. So I would say those are the two big ones that I've really tried to change their vocabulary with how they talk to one another in like a kind and constructive way.
Yeah. That feedback piece is so valuable because I found, and I don't know if you experienced this when you were doing playing tests originally, but I would, the student would do the playing test. I would give them the feedback, but they'd never actually look at the feedback and they'd never actually do anything with it.
Right.
It was like playing test done. They checked the box, they were done. But the way you're talking about doing it, if the students have to give each other this feedback, they're so much more involved in it and they're so much more aware of it. And that's great.
It like goes one step further for them. Like then it becomes versus that engaged, like you have to be engaged when you're performing a playing test, but empowering them to think about how they're playing and what kind of feedback they might be getting from a child, and then also the flip side, if a child is playing, they're not just zoning out, just doing their own thing. Right. They're trying to think through the feedback that they're going to give. So again, they're taking ownership of something that I used to do. And frankly, it took up a lot of time. And it was just like very teacher student. And now it's more of like a discussion and a hands-on experience. And I've just been loving it because I did it in sixth grade this past year. And now I'm really excited to see how they level up their intelligence, with the musicianship in seventh and eighth grade. So I'm excited to see.
Such a good foundation to give them, as we were saying, to be more independent in their musicianship. Yeah, because now they can listen, they can think through it.
Right.
Yeah.
Another thing I heard you say too that was cool is just that I tried, like the dynamics menu, template or something like that. But then I think sometimes we try some of those big things and we think we have to keep them. And it's like, no, you can try something. And when you did it, you learned all these other things. And then I heard you say like that you put in your planning every day. So that's the cool thing too, right? Like I did Genius Hour with a second grade teacher years ago. And like, I learned so much about what I could do in a daily plan. And I don't have to do Genius Hour every year or offer that all the time. Because I learned so much about it. So, or, learn so much through the process. So we have to remember that, like, right. Try some things, try some big things, and then just take those little snippets and put it in your daily stuff too.
It's hard, right? Because when you go to like a professional development or like the amazing, Vandercook classes, you're so passionate and excited about using it, right? And you kind of like take the logic out of it a little bit. You're like, I'm going to use this, and, and then all of a sudden you get to your day and you're like, oh, I didn't sleep well. I have 3 back-to-back rehearsals, and then it's like real life happens. So I love taking the amazing stuff that all of these teachers have come up with and making it manageable for me to deliver successfully to the students.
Yeah.
So like, I think as I get older, I'm trying to figure out how not to get overwhelmed, with the 16 pieces that I have to, make fun and engaging and empowering for the kids. And that's what this class did for me. It turned like a different switch on. It's not all on me,
Yeah.
and if they like a certain part of that, menu, great. I'll run with that the next couple of weeks in little different aspects of it. It doesn't have to be the menu every single day. So that's cool about getting older and getting more experiences. Like, I'm like, I don't have to overwhelm myself with doing like 5 games a day, to be like a fun, cool teacher.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, I don't know, about you. When I was in school, everything was driven by the teacher. So I really thought that's how it had to be. Like that was just the assumption, we did what what we experienced. But yeah, it's as I've gotten more experienced and older and all of that, you realize like, no, it doesn't have to be this way. In fact, it can be really like almost magical when we flip it on them a little bit more.
Yes. I think the wording that I go back to is, are we preparing them for my past or their future? And I feel like I did put it up on my board every day because it wasn't for them. It was really for me to remind, because I was the same way. And school wasn't something that I was excited to go to every day, just because I knew that it was very much like, I'm going to write notes from the board down on my notebook. Yeah. And that's really it. You don't have that level of, complex empowerment is a great word. I didn't feel that and not the teacher's fault. It's what education was, right. And I think it's so cool that now we get to have that conversation. Well, you did grow up that way, but it doesn't have to be like that for the next generation. We have all these cool technology things now that really can get them thinking about how they want to be incorporated in their education. We're not giving their education to them. They have to, take ownership of that and run with it.
Yeah. Yeah. What are some of the benefits that you've noticed from like the student side? Like, what do you see? It's probably, anecdotally, what do you see different now that you're making some of these shifts over time?
Just like walking into the classroom, like, what are we going to do today? That's like a little thing for me that like made me really happy. Because when they go, class to class to class to class, for them to walk in my class and be like excited, like, what are we doing today? Just because they know that it's going to be different. So that challenges me, that I don't want to ever be mundane. And I want them to always look forward to like the different that we're doing, and which is so cool about music, right? Like, I know that some classes have to be like chapter 1, chapter 2 as like a progression, but what my class doesn't have to be like that. So I delved into improvisation a lot. And that is like something that they were, are we going to do that today? Kind of thing. And just seeing that kind of like lightness in their eye as a middle schooler made me really happy.
You don't hear a lot of orchestra teachers talk about improvisation. So it's really exciting to hear you mention that.
Believe me, it's outside of my comfort zone. And, I like over the past 3 years, taking different classes from Vandercook, just the importance of like going outside your comfort zone. And I think it goes back to like, just because I have the tools that I'm comfortable with doesn't mean that like those are the things that my kids are gonna, respond to. So I've been learning improv with them. I mean, I'm not knowledgeable on improv by any means, but I was like, they don't know any better that I don't know. So, and I want them to know that I'm doing this with them and I'm uncomfortable as well, because becoming a human to them, I think, is really important. The teacher doesn't like know all, and, so I think it's very important. I have an instrument in my hand and I'm doing it with them. Is a really big component of string players. String players just are like really uncomfortable with that, not reading, or classically trained are not reading notes on a page and playing exactly what's in that. So for me, that's been a huge thing, like a huge change. And they actually really love it. Because there's only a standard amount of rhythms that we get as middle school pieces, We were just having this conversation with band teachers. They were like, why do we have all the complex syncopated rhythms and you guys have, Mississippi stop stop, it's just that's, like they're capable of playing syncopation at a young age. It's just maybe not in the literature. So having that improv, incorporated in my orchestra classroom is huge. And I think they like totally ran with it this year. I gave them a jazz piece for chamber orchestra and they just totally loved it. Like they loved the solo part of not having any, they had like a, the pentatonic scale and they could just play any notes and any rhythms that they wanted. And they were finally given that freedom to be like, you can do whatever you want. And it is scary at first, but then it's like kind of exciting. You're like, ooh, I don't like have to do what's on the page. So my chamber kids loved it. And I feel like I loved it because I was watching them, get excited about something that we don't typically see in the string classroom.
Yeah, that's really fun. Yeah, I remember. Oh, sorry, Kathryn.
I was just going to ask, do you happen to know what their 5th grade general music experience is like coming into you? Like, I'm wondering if that is natural in their classroom there, or maybe it's not, but
not typically, no.
Okay.
And, we've been talking, like, again, for me, that 5th to 6th grade transition, as I get more into the district, it's really important to me to, like, be friendly with those general music teachers because I want to know if you're using T and Ta. I want to know if you're ever incorporating numbers into rhythms. That's just like those little things and those improv things. Are you doing that in your classroom? No judgment if you're not, but I just want to have open the conversation, Yeah,
I found that was a big thing when I was teaching in one of my schools, just being able to think about my classes teaching band and orchestra as an extension of what they were already learning in music and getting the kids to see it as it's all music. It's not like music is here and band is here. Like it's all music. So as soon as we started making those connections between what they did in their general music classes and my class, it was amazing. So that's great that you're having those conversations and that you're, it's not a judgment thing. You just want to be able to build off of what they've done.
Yeah. And I had such a great experience with my elementary. I had 3 elementary schools. Yeah. I'm best friends with those general music teachers. Why? Because that was our main goal, to just have the flow from their general music class to orchestra be the same and say, hey, I know you learned about fractions in math, right? And you're learning a little bit of that in, music, general music now. Let's talk about that. And let's talk, so they're hearing me speak about different things that are happening outside of my classroom. And they're like, oh, yeah, it's the same thing. So it's just a little different in middle school because we don't have general music. But I think it's important to keep saying it to the 6th graders. I know you did this in elementary school. Just being aware of what they're doing instead of asking them what they did, because they're going to be like, yeah, we didn't do that. And it's like, yes, you did.
I noticed that too. Like when an orchestra comes and talks to my 2nd graders, because they have orchestra in 3rd grade, or when band comes and talks, I really try to make sure, like we always try to get to notation, but that's usually what I present towards the end of what we're learning, just because you want to have them do it and feel it and do all those things and then see it. But I really try to make sure I make that connection, because I think one year I had a kid who was like, I can't do fill in the blank orchestra or band. I can't read the music. And I was like, oh my God, like, yes, you can. Let me show you really quickly. Remember how we do me right now? Like that's notation. Look at that. You do know how, but just making those connections for them, because sometimes, kids make rules for themselves, whether they're true or not, about I can or I can't. And so it's really cool when music teachers can talk to each other and know each other's, language they say with the kids, just to kind of make those little bridges and connections. Cause
one of my favorite things is talking with like my other, music teachers, right? Because I grew up in college where anybody walked into your classroom, right? It didn't matter anymore. It wasn't like, this is mine, and this is what I'm doing in my classroom. I grew up with, you're going to have 10 administrators in there one day, maybe. And maybe you're going to have, a elementary class come in one day. And so I just never got uncomfortable with that. And I want to do that with my colleagues. So what we do in Fairfield, which is awesome, is the string teacher at another middle school. We pick one piece in 8th grade together, and then we go run each other's rehearsals in different middle schools. And it's just such a good conversation starter because, that rhythm that's been bugging you that they can't get, all of a sudden that string teacher has a technique to just get it. And then I'm listening to their students and seeing how she works with them and how her, student-centered classroom, I'm like, oh, I love that setup. It's such a great setup to, get them talking to each other. Like we do the circle with all different instruments, and it gets them listening to, so I just think it's the more times that you have open communication with the other people that are doing that work with you is so great, because we can get bogged down in what we're doing every single day. And I'm lucky where I can talk to like my colleagues and they have such a positive way of being like, yeah, come into my classroom, I'll come into your classroom. And then the kids are excited because they're seeing a different person and how you work with them. So I think it's really valuable in the power of communication with, even this podcast. Like you're reaching so many different music teachers and so many different perspectives. I think that's just the coolest thing ever with technology.
Yeah. That sounds incredible. What an opportunity to be able to do that with another middle school teacher. And like, I'm sure people could also, do something like that virtually. It wouldn't be quite as powerful, but I'm just thinking like that should be encouragement to anybody. Just reach out to someone who does something similar to you and have those conversations and make the connections and, do a Zoom rehearsal clinic or something like that. Like, cause it's not a matter of, it's not judgment. It's just like, we need to get out of our classrooms and see what else is happening out there.
Yeah, I think like when as a first year teacher, all is your college professors, right? So it's like, if you're trying to get that experience, like bring them in virtually, and that's just like such a cool thing. And then for me, I had such a great experience at my first district that I worked in, that I had the high school orchestra teacher come in virtually to my class because I know he's so knowledgeable, and we were working on a specific piece that I had done with him back in that district. And it's just like connecting with different people. And I think that's just so cool. So the virtual thing is amazing. And it can be scary, right? But like all you have to do is ask.
Yeah.
As you get older, it's like, I don't care, I'll just ask,
Right.
Versus like as a first year teacher, you're like, I don't want to do anything wrong. It's more like about you than it is the students. So now it's like, as you get older, it's more about the students and what the opportunities you can give them. So
yeah, that's very, very true. This is awesome. So many good ideas. So as you know, because you've read Pass the Baton, one of the things we tried to do at the end of each chapter was offer some like things to try tomorrow, right? Just a little quick, actionable ideas that we hoped could like just get wheels spinning and get people trying things. And people have liked them. They've been very well received. So would you have something that you could offer to listeners, like something that they could try tomorrow?
Yeah. So something I picked up from Pass the Baton book was the music videos, and the kids like basically making a video of what they had learned. So we have like a music genre that we have to go through for every grade level. For example, 6th grade needs fiddle playing and Baroque period. And it would always be like something I threw out. I was like, this is this date, the Baroque period, we play with our hand up a little bit because they didn't have frogs back then. It was just like a stick. And so they'd be like, fine, but like, it wasn't like empowering them. Like they were like, yeah, that's cool for one day. And then, 3 weeks later, they're like, I don't know what the Baroque period is. So something we did was we made videos, and like all the kids made a video of like 2 facts and how they would play in that style period. So we had a kid dress up, like in full with like, he tried, like what he thinks is like a Baroque period outfit. And like played his instrument and tried to explain why his hand was in the middle of the bow. So it got like, it was just the next level of me teaching something that maybe goes away in their head that they don't find important, but it puts ownership on them to teach another person, so I wasn't teaching them anymore. We were watching videos of all of the kids giving examples and facts about that period. So I would say, trying something tomorrow, if you're struggling with like, they can't remember a key signature, just have them make a video and explain, why are there two sharps in the key of D major and what are they, and as soon as they have to try to teach somebody, all of a sudden they're thinking about it. And I feel like that sticks in their brain a lot more than you standing up in the middle every single day being like, okay, what's the key signature? Oh, there's two sharps. What are they? And they're just like repeating it back to you, which goes back to like how we learned with, we see something on the board, we write it down. We don't think through that process. Them spitting back F sharp and C sharp to me is not something that they're going to remember and like being, have the next level with. So I think that's something that's very attainable. If you're struggling to get them, learning a certain topic in your classroom, have them make a how-to video. I think those are so cool. They all know what Flipgrid is now. And any chance you say, take out your Chromebooks, they're like, oh my gosh, this is awesome,
Yeah.
And it could be like different levels for elementary, middle, and high school. But it's a good leadership thing too. They really, I said to them, I'm going to be playing these videos for the incoming 6th graders to explain to them what the Baroque period is. So they're not learning from me. They're learning from all of you. So as soon as they start to like think about, oh, this isn't just for Miss McGowan, this is for like other kids, they get so excited. And that's what gets me excited. Like, it's just so much more fun to go to work every day and have that type of experience.
Yeah. I noticed too, when I had them start to do things like that, you see kind of the fun in the little holes in your teaching, right? You're like, oh, a lot of friends think this is this. And it's like, oh, we gotta, reteach that. But I didn't know that before. Right. And then the next year when I teach that group, like I make sure I hit some of those topics of like, just misconceptions that they might have now that I've heard, so many kids tell me something that I didn't realize they didn't understand. So.
Absolutely. It's just a different way of being informed, right? They're kind of used to just kind of copping out, being like, oh, did you understand this? And they're like, yeah. You're like, I don't know if you did, but we have to keep going. So it's just a cool perspective of, how they're learning it and then teaching it back to you. You're like, oh, I don't know if I would have taught myself or you guys that way, but it's a cool way of doing it,
Yeah.
So I agree. I think it's very informative.
Yeah.
That's really fun.
Yeah. Well, Ally, this has been really, really fun and such good conversation. How can people connect with you and learn more about your work?
Yeah. So they can always email me at amcgowan@fairfieldps.org. Or I have a social media at Ally Taylor. I can give you guys the links to all that. And just getting out there with the, American String Teacher Association, if, they're in this part of, the state, and just getting out there. Even if you're not in Connecticut or you're anywhere, just reaching out to your organizations. It's just like such a nice thing to, connect with different teachers. So
we'll make sure to have links. Perfect.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. We really enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us. If you have found value in our conversation, please hit that like button, subscribe to our podcast, and leave a review. Your feedback means the world to us and helps us grow our community of passionate music educators.